listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, how's it going? Hope you're well, and thanks as always for choosing to listen to my Straight to Video podcast. Today on the show, I get to welcome along a local to me synthwave recording duo who are working tirelessly to bring us new music every single month, and most recently released an EP of 80s movie soundtrack cover versions and some other great tunes under the title of CDR 80s, featuring tracks such as King of Wishful Thinking and Playing with the Boys from Top Gun. So on today's podcast, I chat with producer Fonz Tramontano and vocalist Calida J, and we had a fun talk all about how the two of them got together, their musical backgrounds, and of course our mutual love of all things 80s. Now, prior to the release of their new EP, the pair have released several songs which are available through all the main streaming platforms, or you can check out fonztramontano.com, which covers the whole catalogue of great tunes, and I hope you enjoyed diving in. Calida also has a website at calidajh.com with links to her work with Fonz and other solo material too, and both of them can be found on Instagram. But right now though, please enjoy my straight to video chat with Fonz Tramontano and Calida J. Thanks for doing this for us. Love the new EP, but I just want to dive into a little bit of the history how the two of you got together. Can you tell us how you both met and began working with each other?
Yeah. Do you want me to go, Fonz?
Yeah, you go for it, Cal.
So I was in a band called Trinity Road, and what was that, about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
It was like a little covers band over in Chesterfield, and Fonz's band was one of the first bands that actually gave us a support slot.
We did the EP launch at Chesterfield Football Club, if you remember.
Yeah. We were just local to each other in Chesterfield on the sort of covers circuit with the bands we were in.
What band was yours, Fonz?
It's a band called Metropolis. It's still going. An 80s style classic rock. It's been going about 16 years now. So it did original stuff originally, but then just to get more gigs, we've sort of just done 80s, sort of AC/DC, Whitesnake, all the stuff that you would instantly recognise, nothing obscure.
What was your role in the band? Was you guitarist, singer?
Yeah, so originally I was singer and guitarist because nobody else could sing. And I hated singing. And now we've got a great American guy who looks like Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top from Utah called Jay. So he's the lead singer now. So I'm enjoying it far more.
Right. So you're still part of that band?
Yeah.
You didn't leave to do this. That band kind of carries on.
No, not at all. No. And to be fair, I don't really like rock music much. I used to play in bands from being 15 to being 23, doing all the pubs, clubs, summer seasons, all the stuff. And obviously that was in the 80s, so it was a lot of 80s songs and 60s and Motown and got a brass section and all that sort of stuff. And packed in when I was about 23, 24. I had kids. And then at 16, my eldest started drumming and wanted to start a band. So he asked me if I'd help him. And as these things, occur, the rest of the lads didn't want to carry on. And we got all the equipment. So we just carried on and it just went from there.
So how did you two decide to work together? Was you starting off this project on your own funds and like working with different singers, or what brought the two of you together?
Originally, I started because I got some time because my wife wasn't well at the time. So I decided to do all this sort of stuff. And the 80s sort of synth music is my sort of what I listen to, and synthwave now, obviously. I started off singing myself and then didn't like that. I did about 3 albums with that. And then just started working with different vocalists.
Yeah. You'd worked with an artist that I know. So I'd noticed that the two of you had done something together. So then I was like, oh, I want a bit of that. But then I think I just messaged you and I was like, I'll do something. And then, we've done a lot in the last year, haven't we?
We have.
What was the first song you recorded and released? Was it The Waiting Room?
Was, yeah. And, it was so easy, as in, close your ears now, Carl, otherwise you'll get... So it was so easy working with Calida that we now, and me previously, worked far in advance, really. Because we release every first Friday of every month, and you need 4 weeks to sort of upload so that you can pitch to Spotify to try and get on release radar and stuff. We worked quite far in advance. So we started working together and I'd already got tracks that I was either working on or had already done. And it was just so much easier. This is not sort of dissing who I've worked with because it's not like that. It's just when you're working with somebody all the time, when you're producing music, You get to know all the settings in regard to the compressors, sibilants, everything's just so quick and easy. And also with the quality of what Calida actually creates. Never once have I say, oh, well, can you change that or whatever? Because everything's just spot on. And we just decided to work together and continue working together. And so I don't work with anybody else at all now. And had we thought about it, we probably would have had a band name. But because it's sort of just grown.
You're stuck with it now.
Yeah, we're stuck with two names.
Calida, was you used to the recording at home thing? Is that something you'd been doing for a while, or?
No, so obviously, I've been in cover bands before. We'd never recorded anything. And then I was in an originals band called Sphinx. So we'd done a couple of bits of recording with that band. But for the first track that I did with Fonz, Waiting Room, I actually recorded with a friend of mine who's got a little studio. And then not long after that, I was like, well, I'll just get my own bit of gear. Because once you've got a little bit of gear, you get another little bit of gear. And then working with Fonz, he's been helping me sort of understand how to use all of this stuff. So now I've got my own little tiny studio, which it's good. Hopefully very soon I'll have a bigger one.
How was it for you, well, for both of you, venturing into this synthwave world, coming from playing in live bands and cover bands and stuff? From the outside, it might seem like a whole new scene, but I guess the basis of this kind of music, it's rooted in the things we grew up on. So it's not that hard to switch gears, but was there any adapting to it or seeing what other people were doing?
You've got a massive crossover with metalheads and rockers and synthwave, haven't you? There's all the nostalgic stuff. But I mean, I was at the Brock gig, I can't remember, was it October last year? And when you look around, there's such a random combination of people because you've got the industrial goth. And I think obviously I had a bit of a metally background of what I liked and listened to. I think the two are just very intertwined, aren't they? And in terms of recording, it's vocals. My band Sphinx that was in is very synthy. And again, it was like an 80s thing. It's just very similar, just a bit different as well.
Yeah. Fonz, did you make a conscious decision to go into that style of stuff? Did you see it grow in the whole, if you want to call it a scene or a movement?
No, not really. Because obviously when you're in a band, even though I was the primary sort of writer, not through choice, it just happened. But then as the band developed and we got other members in, then writing became more of a challenge. So as an example, I'm basically, if I've got to do sort of rock music, for me, it all stems back to rock and roll and blues. So it's got to have a melody. If it's got more than 4 chords, then I'm a bit, whereas all the members of the band, a lot of them into Iron Maiden, into metal. And those two were very challenging to try and get consensus in regard to writing a song. So you end up either compromising. And so I was just feeling, well, what's the point? And so doing this, I thought, right, if I'm going to do it, I want to be able to do something that I can do within my house in the studio. And what do I love? Well, I love 80s synth music. Yazoo, OMD, just give me a John Hughes film soundtrack and I'm a happy boy. So, and that's what I did. And then I found it quite difficult initially. And the social media, Twitter at that time, which I've now left, but at that point I got to about 19,000 followers because it was a big scene in regards to synthwave. But I found it quite difficult to get in because there were a lot of established artists. And so I did a bit of dance music for a while. So I released about 10 singles. And I just thought, I don't really like this. I don't even know why I'm doing it. So I just went back to it and thought, sod it. If people like it, if other artists, if I can connect with them, fine. And then I found by collaborating with other artists, then my name got known and also starting in my own playlist. That helped immensely. So it was a conscious decision, yeah.
Are the streams and playlists play an important role for you then? It is a conscious thing you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, every day. I could tell you what the follower count was, the stream numbers for every single day for about 7 years.
Dude.
It's important.
I didn't know that there was a place that looks at your Shazam stats. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's really important.
Which song's got the most response and why do you think it is?
Some of it is to do with promotion. So meta ads, that does help.
It's not very rock and roll sounding, is it?
No, it's not rock and roll at all. Yeah, all warts and all now, Rob. So yeah, we're very big in Brazil and Mexico.
Ukraine pops up a lot as well.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Don't know why. But the biggest one, I think, which was interesting was...
Never Give Up.
Never Give Up, that's the one. What did that do? That was over 10,000 in a month.
It was the first week or so.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
And then we're balling out with Spotify.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Spotify, if you have a large influx of streams, because it's all automated, they think it's a bot. And so they stopped the stream count. And I contacted them to say, look, the streams are coming from Release Radar and radio. which, you know, you can't bot those. Those are Spotify's owned, as you probably know, their own playlist. Of course, you're dealing with either somebody online who's a call center miles away or just an automated bot on a chat thing. You can't speak to them. Record company tried to get involved. So in the end, we just gave up.
Any idea what triggered that response? Do you know what it was?
Yeah, it was the fact that they pushed it out to Ukraine, Poland. And so we were getting, I mean, at one point, how many was it, Cal? Like the number of listeners?
It was early in the morning because I was in Whitby, wasn't I? And I was just watching the numbers going, this is crazy. And like you say, it was Spotify's own playlist. So why have they got, you know, if they believed that there was bots there, why are they on their own playlist?
Which bands and artists have been particularly inspiring for this project? Obviously, there's the old school stuff, like you say, you love the John Hughes soundtracks and 80s stuff, but any bands who are currently doing well at the moment, is there anybody in particular who you're not necessarily following their blueprint, but you've seen them go from strength to strength?
Yeah, well, often you'll say to me, like, what sort of things are we like at the minute? The Fonz does all the track. I've just come in with the vocal melody and the lyrics over the top. So we do have a chat about what we're listening to. And obviously, I like a lot of heavier, darker stuff. So I'm at the minute listening to a lot of Sierra, actually. So I don't know if she's that synthwavy. And we like Christine, don't we?
We do.
Talked about more guitars and stuff like that. But for me, it'd be Carpenter Brute and then LeBron. And then, now I've gone blank. But there's plenty.
So every music that I pull together is always based on some sort of style. So for me personally, I listen to a lot of the Midnight.
For me, the Midnight are the peak of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen them live and they are amazing.
Where'd you see them at?
Where did I see them at? Nottingham.
Okay, I couldn't get to the Nottingham one. I went to the Manchester one a few nights before. It was stunning. It was great.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're just a cut above everybody else, in my opinion. But I mean, I love female singers. So singers like Nina.
Yeah, Nina's brilliant.
Yeah. And I think when you said, you know, I just provide the vocal and the lyrics and the melody, it's like, that's not right, is it? Because actually, that's what I was saying before, Rob, that it's really quite difficult to get somebody who can be, because it is a bit like a production line. They're like having kids, really. The one you're working on, the one you've just done is always your favourite one. And then when you know you're expecting again and there's another track coming, then you focus on that one. But to be able to have somebody that can come up with, I just don't know how you do it, Cal. I just, not a clue.
Oh, I guess we do have chats as well sometimes. If I'm like, oh, it's a bit bright, can you bring it down a bit? Or we've had a chat about structures and stuff before, haven't we?
If a chorus, for example, isn't working or the verse is too short or the track before last, I think the chorus we completely just ripped out and put a new one in. So yeah, it's a team effort completely. It's just that we work separately initially and then it comes together. We have a chat. I go away and do something, send it across, make any changes. Then it happens in reverse. And then when we're at that point where the stems are sent, the vocal stems, then it's like you go into mixing mode and again, get sent back. Any changes? Yeah, that line needs to come up a bit. Can that come down? Can you soften this? Whatever it might be. And then you end up with a final version. And then as soon as we both listen to it in the car, we both listen to it on headphones, on speakers. When we've both done that and we're all happy, it'll be like, that's it, off to the record company.
Are you each other's quality control?
Probably, yeah.
Like you listen to it on like lots of different mediums, don't you? So you've got your earbuds and then you've got your car and then you've got your speakers on your computer. So you just try and listen to it on everything. And even on your phone, because it's so different on a phone.
That's the scary thing. That's the big thing now, isn't it? It has to be mastered or mixed to sound good on a phone, which is, again, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Again, you mentioned the Midnight. The template that I use for mastering is Los Angeles by the Midnight, because the way that mastering template is set up, the kick comes through exactly the same, because everything's played live and by hand. And even the drum machine, but the drum sample for the kick is from Los Angeles. So it's the same kick sample taken from that. And the snare is from the Comeback Kid. There's two snares. And they're both from the Comeback Kid. They're slightly different when you mix them together. And the Midnight did a online tutorial about how they process, how they mix and master and what they use. So basically I just went out and bought the same stuff that they use as much as possible, because it's not hardware stuff. It's all in the box. So you can just download it, pay for it and use it. So that's been a big thing, really.
We mentioned seeing the Midnight live, which is like a whole different animal in a way. How do you feel like this kind of music translates live? Is it something you'd like to do with this project at some point, or have you talked about it?
We literally talked about this last week, didn't we? It's very different to what we used to doing. It takes some working out, I think. We did have a very brief chat about it, because obviously I'd love to go out and get gigged and stuff. I do miss that at the minute, but it's a difficult scene, the synthwave scene in the UK. I'll have to go to LA.
I'd love to do it. But to answer your question in regard to does it sort of transfer live, I think if you saw some of the, and I've only seen them online, the early midnight shows, they weren't what they are now. So they've understood that to make real money, you've got to play live and you sell your merch, and to get more fans, even though they've done amazingly well. But to do that, the days of having Yazoo with Vince Clarke on keyboards and Alison Moyet just stood there with a tape deck running, like the Human League, that doesn't really cut it, I don't think, anymore. And there's still people that'll try and do that. So for us, it would have to be, we'd have to have some visuals, we'd have to do it.
Yeah, it's got to be a performance in the whole sense. Yeah.
I think even LeBrock, I saw them a couple of times on some of their early tours, and it was just the two of them. And now they've gone to full band. I know Michaels didn't do the last tour.
Gunship as well.
Yeah.
And it is, you to hold an audience for a whole gig's worth, it's got to be something visual, and especially the bigger the audience. And I think that's what we found with the Midnight. The more popular they became, the bigger the venues. Just having a couple of synths and laptops and Tyler up front is just doesn't cut it really.
Obviously, this music draws many comparisons to the 80s and tends to interweave film into a lot of the visual aspects of the music. Who have been some of your biggest influences, either through music or movies, and did that play a big part in choosing songs for the new CDR 80s EP?
Oh, well, when we talked about doing a covers thing, and you obviously go, no, yeah, let's do the 80s stuff, you just get so excited about like the Top Gun soundtrack and the Rocky soundtrack.
They're the two, Top Gun and Rocky 4, they're the big ones.
Yeah, we were looking at other songs, but then obviously we wanted something that wasn't just those sort of rockier songs, but looking at also, so we got the King of Wishful Thinking, which is just really cool song, isn't it? And then the Kim Wilde cover.
And what we tried to do with them, though, Rob, before I answer your question, what we tried to do with those, like with the King of Wishful Thinking, if you notice, they had a breakdown section in the original, which, to be fair, I didn't think it was very good, that bit anyway. So we decided we want to make it a bit more, we wanted to slow it down, we wanted to make it a bit more synthwavy. And so we stuck a different middle eight in to make it even more recognisable as it's 80s, but it's new. The Kim Wilde one, we really stuck, as much as possible, we stuck to the structure of the original, but tried to have a different intro slightly. But if you run the two songs side by side, they're the same tempo and they're the same key. So that we tried to do. Then the biggest challenge probably that Cal threw down was the Playing with the Boys, which I love that song.
That's my favourite on the EP.
Oh, great.
Sometimes it's my favourite because I just love that song more than the Kim Wilde one. But then actually when I listen to the Kim Wilde one, I really love what we did with it in terms of it is a little bit different, especially with the sort of like some of the vocal harmonies that aren't on the original and stuff like that. So I can't pick between those two.
That song got me 3 points in my 20s on my licence, the original. I play guitar on that, which I haven't played a guitar on sort of a solo track, or a synthwave track rather, since Love Me, which was one of the first ones off the first album. So it didn't really interest me to do that, but we managed to get that done. And that again is very similar to the original. And then obviously the Top Gun one, which was a bit more of a, what can we do that's different? So everybody remembers the riff, but we didn't want to do it we wanted to make it more synthwave. And then I don't know who came up with the idea of doing the sort of lines from the film. And so that's how it all came together, really. We just wanted to do something different, but recognisable. That
one caught me by surprise because I had it on in the background, and then it gets to the last song and it's like the Top Gun anthem. I'm like, oh, it's just going to end with the instrumental track. Cal's vocals come on with just like the quotes from the film. I thought that was a cool way of doing it.
Yeah, it gave me a chance to watch the film and be like, that's a cracking line. Yeah, I love that one. I was messaging Fonz all night while I was watching it, just reading out loud.
But yeah, I think for me, the inspiration, not necessarily for the EP, but like I said before, I think the John Hughes soundtracks are what inspire me all the time. Still keep going back to those. I'm going to actually have to listen to something else because otherwise it get a bit boring.
I always recommend this to people. Have you listened to the John Hughes podcast called Life Moves Pretty Fast? And it's with Tarquin Gotch, who was John Hughes's music supervisor.
Oh, okay.
And he's from the UK. Got to know John Hughes. He went to become a producer. I think he either worked on either Home Alone or Home Alone 2. I think John Hughes took to him because he was from the UK and he could show him all these different bands which John Hughes had never heard of. And that went a long way to the different soundtracks. So in this podcast, it's not like I think it's like a 5-part podcast series, and it chooses a different film each time, and Tarquin goes through how they got the songs for each soundtrack and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, if you think about Some Kind of Wonderful and how the March Violets got on there, from Leeds, And I've always wondered how, furniture and people, how did he get those? I mean, Flesh for Lulu.
That's all Tarquin Gotcha's work, I think. He put them in front of John Hughes. So is that one of your, because you've got in one of your songs, I think it's Neon Kiss, you use a lot of Some Kind of Wonderful imagery. And then you've got a song called Some Kind of Wonderful as well, an earlier song. Is that one of your favourite Hughes films?
Yeah, definitely. The favourite.
Yeah?
Probably my favourite film of all time.
Really?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That and Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club. So those are my top three, really.
It's like Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. They twin together in a way.
And there's 16 candles, isn't there? But that's not as, I've had it on all mediums, VHS, original VHS when it came out. Yeah, all of them.
I've warmed to it a lot more in recent years. I didn't rate it that much when I first saw it.
Really?
I used to love Pretty in Pink. And then I rewatched Pretty in Pink probably about 6 months ago. And I was like, this isn't as good as I remember it. But then I watched Some Kind of Wonderful. I'm like, I'm enjoying this a lot more. I don't know if it's got to be an age thing. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, probably. And it's like Desperately Seeking Susan. It's not John Hughes. But again, I'd watched it, loved it when I was a kid. And then probably, 20 years ago, and it's like, this is rubbish. Got it again. And it's like, wow, this is great. Buy it on Prime, on Amazon Prime.
How about you, Calida? Are any of these films on your radar at all? When we last spoke at the shop, you was like checking out some films and stuff.
Yeah, I was meant to come to your John Hughes viewing at the video shop. Remember, it was my birthday. Bought the tickets and then having to do some band things. I was gutted. I've watched 16 Candles and I've watched Pretty in Pink. And obviously, yeah, Breakfast Club is an absolute fave of mine. But I haven't watched a lot of John Hughes films other than those three.
Weird Science is my favourite one, but that's kind of an odd one out in the whole catalogue.
That is brilliant. Yeah, I have seen that one.
Another good one that it's not John Hughes, Adventures in Babysitting.
Mate, that holds up. That film holds up.
That is a brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
Elizabeth Shue and Keith Coogan. It's a great film, man.
Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
But for me, you see, obviously being 59, that's just my era. So having seen it, the first time round, and as I get older, a bit more nostalgic, for that time. So doing this sort of music with Cal and being able to draw on that. The thing is with synthwave, it's not really it's an overall sort of generalization of the genre, because it's a mixture then of Outrun, which is a bit more based on games of that time. Retro wave, which again is a bit of a mixture of Italo disco and more guitar based as well. So it's very difficult to know. So, when we do publicity, we just use all the tags. If you look on Spotify, our tracks are always hashtag as synthwave, occasionally synth pop. But when you think about it, you should be able to recognize elements that reflect back to that time. But actually with the production techniques and, if you were to put two tracks side by side, which, I've done many a time, they are completely different. You put a Yazoo or OMD, something like Souvenir up, which I'm desperate to get that sound. But again, how they did that, they were literally in a recording studio and they got a choir next door. The choir wanted to borrow something in the studio that OMD were working in. And they said, yeah, that's fine, but we want to record one of you singing a C note. They sampled the C note and all the actual intro, there's like a breathy synth. It's not a synth at all. It's actually some choir person. I don't know if it was a man or a woman, probably a woman. And they basically played chords using that breath, which you could do it today, but, you try and get a patch that sounds like that.
Billie Eilish's brother, who does a lot of it, all of her tracks now, doesn't he? He does a lot of that sampling stuff. It's quite interesting to watch when he mentions that he got a sound from some sort of street corner and it's in their tracks.
Yeah.
It's nuts that information's available to everybody now as well. Not only like the information about it, but you can get all the stems from the old tracks and all that kind of thing. It's bonkers, really.
And also AI now is becoming quite a thing.
What are your thoughts on that? It's here to stay and it's only going to get faster and better. And
yeah,
is this something you could think people could utilize as an inspiration and then take it on? I think that's the only way you can justify it from a creative point of view.
I suppose me personally, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because the artwork, other than the EP, all the artwork is AI generated.
We're churning out a lot of singles, aren't we, though? So to get somebody to be doing that every month would be, especially since we're not making any money.
Yeah, that's true. I think music-wise, vocally, the reason I mentioned it was that you can put a description in, can't you? And it will churn out music to the description.
And it's usually pretty decent as well. You're like, shit.
I can't say that I've tried it or heard anything at the minute. I'm a bit ignorant to it at the minute.
There is a playlist called Synthwave Chill, which is a Spotify playlist, but there are AI generated tracks on there. And you always can tell them, well, one, because they stupidly have mixed names up. So, for example, there was one called, instead of Gunship, it was Blue Ship or something. You can recognize that they've made the names up by trying to copy established artists. But then when you go on to the actual Spotify page, there's no detail whatsoever. And they've got like millions of streams or whatever. And originally, I didn't have a clue. I'm thinking, this is fantastic. Who are these guys? And you look at them and they're not real.
Oh, man, we're doomed.
They've mixed them in with established artists. So you can't really tell. Apart from, you'd think, oh, well, that name's a bit dodgy. How have they got away with that? You know, or couldn't they think of something better than Blue Ship instead of Gunship or whatever? But yeah, you can't, not by listening, you couldn't tell.
And it's moving so fast as well. It's like a lot of the times when you do those, people create songs on AI, you can tell there's like a certain sound which it's got. It's like the equivalent of, that's an AI generated photo because it's got 6 fingers or something like that. It's like the audio equivalent of that. But how fast it's moving, it's going to be interesting.
Music aside, I quite like BT's new thing, in that they've got an AI granny that wastes time with scammers. They apparently have an AI granny voice that just keeps scammers on the line.
Fantastic.
Just confusing people and just talking to them.
That's probably the best thing that's come out of it.
Just you to know that, Cal.
Mint. Right, guys, I'm going to wrap everything up into an 80s movie music bundle, and I want you to time travel a little to a Friday night in the late 80s or early 90s, and you head into the video store. First off, I want to know where your video store was, but what movie soundtrack do you have on the Walkman, and what 3 tapes are you going to rent for the weekend?
Oh, we used to get videos actually from a local guy just around the back of our house. It's like a little corner shop, Dave's shop. So sometimes he'd have stuff in, or we would actually go to the proper Blockbuster, which was a bit more expensive. But I think my 3 films would have been The Lost Boys. Why not? Brilliant film. As we mentioned earlier, Breakfast Club and The Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, good
Great
one.
film.
Did you see any of those at the cinema or just on video?
Just video for me, those, because I was born in 83.
Me showing my age now.
Unlike me, who saw them all.
And what movie soundtrack would you have on the Walkman?
Oh, it's going to be Top Gun, isn't it?
Is it Playing with the Boys is your favourite Top Gun song? Or?
Or Destination Unknown. That's a good one. It was very different, those two, though, aren't they?
Go on then, Fonz.
So for me, the local video shop was in Bolsover Marketplace, and they did have everything. It was only small, but it was great. Soundtrack's got to be Some Kind of Wonderful all day long. And then the 3 tapes, definitely got to be The Breakfast Club, Some Kind of Wonderful, and Pretty in Pink, I think.
It's a huge marathon.
Yeah, that'd be an ideal day, that would be.
Which order, though?
I'd save the best till last, which is Some Kind of Wonderful. So I'd probably go Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful. What about you then, Rob?
Mate, it depends what mood I'm in. Soundtrack-wise, I always say my go-tos are Rocky IV and Top Gun, with Lost Boys coming in strong. But film-wise, it changes all the time.
So if it was today then?
Today, well, now you've planted the Lost Boys seed. I think that's going to be there because I never get bored of it. Lost Boys, Last Starfighter, perhaps.
Yeah, good film.
That's a great one. I've got to have a horror as well. I'm looking at all my tapes, which are down here, to see if something jumps in. I'm going to go The Gate.
Can't remember that.
You know Stephen Dorff from Blade and all that kind of thing. I think it's his very first film. Yeah, check it out. It's a good gateway horror film. Came out in 86, I think, 86 or 87, where these lads find a hole in the backyard and all these little demons come out. But his mate's like this punk rock kid. He's got a killer dwarf's patch on his back. And there's some really gory stuff in it for probably a 15 rated film, but based around a kid's story. Great effects. So yeah, I'm going to go for The Gate.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that.
I don't know how available it is to watch. So what's next? You've got this strict release routine.
Finished the February release, which is called MIA. Now, are we on track 13 or 14? Because we had one track we didn't use and then we get confused about which number we were on.
If you count the EP as one track,
yeah,
which isn't obviously, but as one release, then technically 13 was the one that's just gone. So we've got the music for 14, 15, and I've nearly finished 16.
Oh, and is it the 15? It's a bit OMD.
Yeah, so 14's the Yazoo style.
Yeah.
The 15 is the OMD style.
Is like an album a priority or anything you want to do or have you done anything physical?
No, I think we've just been, because we've seen, you've mentioned earlier on, sort of like listener numbers and Spotify and all the rest of it, because we've seen the effect that actually releasing things regularly has, we tend to want to stick to that, don't we? And people will listen to individual tracks and it'll keep popping up. Whereas if we had an album, I think that'd be a lot of time.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? That's the thing. We would have been, because we've done the 4 tracks, we normally would already have at least 2 more completed and with the record company. But because we've spent time doing 4 tracks in the space that we would normally do perhaps 1.5, 2 tracks or whatever, it's put us slightly behind into where we normally are. So doing an album would really completely, unless we had a break of, neither of us was working or doing anything else other than sitting there writing, an album would be quite challenging.
There's no option to like compile all these.
Yeah, they can do that, and we could do a physical release. But unless you're gigging, maybe I'm the odd one out. I mean, for me, as soon as streaming came out, it's like, thank God.
Get rid of this shit.
And I might be talking to the wrong person here, but a lot of the synthwave community released stuff on cassette. Now, I hated cassettes when they were originally out. It's like, this is pants, really. We should have a record. And now they're going back to it, and it's just like, no, thanks.
Got a nice quality to them. I'd like a cassette because of how they look. And it's almost like, even if you never play it.
If we want to do it, I'm happy to do it.
People say nobody's got a CD player anymore, but I think a CD is a fairly inexpensive thing to have at a gig. So people perhaps won't listen to it, but they want to support the artist, so they'll buy a CD. And obviously you say cassettes are becoming more and more popular. I often wonder if you could put out a blank CD and a blank cassette and how many people would actually come back to you and say there's nothing on this. Because I bet there won't be many.
There won't be many, you're right. Absolutely. As long as it's got a nice cover.
Yeah, it just goes on the shelf, gathers some dust. But they supported the artist, but they're still streaming it. I'm sure that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm probably guilty of it.
Yeah, we'll think about that.
One thing somebody actually mentioned to me, which I thought was a really good idea, was doing like art prints with a QR code on it. So you got the art print and you can scan the QR code and that takes you to a download of the album, or whether even people want to download anymore, I don't know. But it gives you access to stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people use Bandcamp to sell merchandise and also downloads. But again, me personally, people buy my stuff, I buy their stuff, or, if I like a song, just to show support, because obviously your little picture comes up to say you've supported the artist. If you ask me if I ever actually streamed anything from Bandcamp, the answer would be no. So I spent a couple of £100 or whatever, and I've never used it.
Yeah, I have few downloads that I've bought from bands to support them, but I don't know where they go in the phone. I end up back on Spotify because it's quick.
It's a whole different world.
Definitely not 80s.
Yeah, definitely not. Right, guys, I'll let you go, but thanks ever so much for chatting with me.
No, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
I'll speak to you soon.
See you, Rob. Thanks. See you, Cal.
Bye.
Big thank you to Fonz Tramontano and Calida J for joining me on this week's show. I'm excited to see what the future holds for them in the synthwave community, and hopefully at some point we'll get to see and hear some of the songs in a live format. Fingers crossed. In the meantime, check out fonztramontano.com or calidajh.com to keep up to date. So over at our 80s video shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire, it feels like we've hit the ground running in 2025. We've had a real influx of people coming into the shop at the weekends, and what has been really cool is how many people are getting back into collecting VHS tapes. We have a whole selection on sale if you're one of those, and we're also adding some new merchandise and updating certain areas of the shop, so please stop by soon. We also have a bunch of new guest announcements on the way. The first is that on Saturday the 31st of May, we'll be welcoming actor and voice artist Charlie Schlatter to the shop. Charlie starred in some great 80s Hollywood movies from 18 Again with George Burns, the Chris Columbus movie Heartbreak Hotel, and he also starred alongside Kylie Minogue in The Delinquents. He played the role of Ferris Bueller in the TV spin-off of the John Hughes classic, which also starred Jennifer Aniston, and since then Charlie's become a hugely in-demand voice artist in the cartoon world, lending his talents to The Flash, various Transformers and G.I. Joe characters. And what is super cool, which I'm excited to learn more about, is that he was the voice of E.T. in the awesome Holiday Reunion short film and commercial from a few years ago, so he's certainly going to have some stories to tell. So please, keep an eye on updates on the 80s Video Shop social media, as along with a signing we'll be having a Q&A and a special movie screening too. So make sure to put Saturday the 31st of May in your diaries and look out for other announcements real soon. So that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks so much for sticking with me, and until we chat again, make sure to always be kind, please rewind and unwind, and I'll catch you real soon.